Eastern texts like the Upanishads describe human anatomy as a glowing web of 72,000 nadis, channels where a vital energy called prana flows. For centuries, Western medicine looked at these descriptions, smiled, and filed them away as spiritual poetry. In the 20th century, human anatomy was treated essentially like a mechanical engine. You had your structural framework in the bones, your moving parts in the muscles, and your electrical wiring in the nervous system. If a biological structure didn't fit neatly into one of those categories, it was ignored. This mechanical bias created a massive blind spot in early surgical studies. When anatomists cut into the body to map it, they routinely sliced right through the thick webbing of connective tissue holding everything together, tossing it into the surgical bin as mere packing material. They were constrained by the tools they had. Looking through early microscopes, researchers could only perceive what the lenses could resolve. They built a medical reality that entirely missed the body's most extensive, interconnected network. But the ancient rishis who mapped those 72,000 channels were engaged in a rigorous internal mapping process. Their instruments were highly purified, carefully trained nervous systems, paying relentless attention to the feeling of their own biology. The subtle body described in these ancient texts was never supernatural. It was entirely physical. It was simply operating at scales and speeds our historical microscopes were not equipped to measure. That measurement gap finally closed. Between 2021 and 2025, fascia research shifted from studying dead packing material to mapping a living bioelectric signaling network within the extracellular matrix. That connective tissue is actually the body's largest sensory organ. It's a tensegrity lattice, a continuous tension-balancing web of collagen that wraps every artery, lung, and muscle, forming unbroken planes from the soles of your feet up to the dome of your skull. Look closely at this structure. The ancient map of the nadis maps precisely onto the modern fascial network. The chief energetic conduits described by ancient mystics, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, mirror the fascial planes, the vagus nerve, and the midline cerebrospinal axis with precision. Even more fascinating is how this webbing behaves. The fascial network is capable of piezoelectricity. That means when you apply mechanical pressure to this collagen lattice through movement or stretching, the physical pressure is converted directly into an electrical charge. Those ancient texts detailing energy channels were direct, accurate phenomenological reports of the fascial and vagal networks conducting electrical currents. This brings us to prana itself. If the nadis are the physical fascial network, prana is the coherent bioelectric and biophotonic signaling traveling through that matrix. Because the fascia is bathed in interstitial fluid, mechanical signals can ripple through this web at speeds that actually outpace traditional neural transmission. The body communicates with itself faster than the brain can process. We can see this in action by looking at the hard empirical data of what happens to a human in a clinical setting during slow, controlled yogic breathing, known as pranayama. This dual-panel chart shows the brain's response to smooth, laminar breathing. On the left, fMRI scans reveal that the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for anxious, looping thoughts, drops significantly. Simultaneously, on the right, gamma coherence, which indicates heightened focus and sensory integration, spikes upward. That rising gamma coherence is accompanied by immediate physiological changes. Heart rate variability improves, vagal tone increases, and within minutes, we see a rapid, quantifiable spike in anti-inflammatory cytokines. When an ancient teacher instructed a student to make the breath subtle, it was an explicit instruction to dampen the stress response and shift the entire nervous system into a state of cellular repair and gamma coherence. The Upanishads pose a compelling koan based on all this. Once you realized you are made of the absolute fabric of the universe, why does the body still pulse? Why does a sudden rush of wind across your skin still move through you? Realization isn't about escaping the physical world. It is about becoming the most exquisite, attentive participant in its natural flows. Try placing your hand on your sternum right now. You don't need to manipulate anything. Just listen. Beneath the skin is that living silk, the fascia wrapping your heart and lungs, running continuously to the tips of your toes. let your breathing slow down. At the bottom of every exhale, there is a natural, unforced pause, a moment the yogis call kumbhaka. In that tiny suspension of breath, the distinction between what is inside you and what is outside you begins to thin. To the rishis, this prana was the exhalation of Brahman, the very impulse of the Absolute choosing to move. From this perspective, the bioelectric pulse inside your fascia is not a separate event from the gravitational currents turning a spiral galaxy. Both are manifestations of the same underlying motion. There is only one circulation. When you breathe, what moves through you is the entire universe, wearing the garment of motion, choosing to breathe itself into form.